Oh, it's recording again. Welcome to Self-Studying AP Physics C question and answers plus a bonus score reaction.
Woo! I'm excited.
And I'm Michael. I'm Michael and
I'm Chaudhry. So, just to give a bit of background on both of us, we just graduated high school, we just finished grade 12. We both took AP Physics 1 and 2 in grade 11 and 12 correspondingly, and we're both going into a physics-related major. Michael's going into astronomy, and I'm not too sure, but I'm probably going into applied physics as of now. Okay, first we're going to give a bit of a breakdown of how physics works with respect to AP, because it's actually really confusing.
yeah, so there's 4 different AP Physics courses, and each course there's a specific exam that's corresponded to that course. For biology, chemistry, there's only one AP. There's AP Bio, AP Chemistry, but for physics there's 1, 2, C, Mechanics, and C, Electricity and Magnetism. Not C, Electricity and C, Magnetism, no, but C, Electricity and Magnetism combined. So there's 4 exams, okay?
So I'm going to talk about the first AP Physics, which is AP Physics 1.
Yep.
This is the fundamental, the most basic out of all the AP courses. It's what you're going to be probably taking in grade 11, maybe grade 10, depending on your school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the general things. It's kinematics, it's springs, it's all algebra based, so it's like it's kind of like a terminal kind of course. It's like you learn it, and then that's kind of the extent of your learning. You're not really getting into the nitty-gritty, all the real-life applications which you'd learn in things like engineering or physics. It's more like a life science kind of course.
Yeah, like a lot of life science or like political science students in university take this physics course, because remember, AP Physics is a university level course taught in high school.
And that allows them to skip first year physics, which a lot of life science students end up failing.
Way to put it out there. Alright, and AP Physics 2 is all, it gets kind of weird, talking about gases, thermodynamics, and all this like fluids type stuff.
And more about electricity and magnetism.
Yeah.
And also a really interesting course, which ends up being one of the major sectors of physics, which is modern physics, which is what we're kind of discovering and learning about now. Mm-hmm. So it gets really funky. A lot of modern physicists talk about it. For example, Niels Bohr said, if someone can think about quantum mechanics, which is part of modern physics, without getting giddy, then they really don't know the first thing about it. Or Richard Feynman said that if you think you know everything about quantum mechanics, you really don't even know the first thing about it. Onto the good stuff.
Oh yeah.
This is what you came here for, the AP Physics C. Do you want to start off with mechanics?
Okay, so AP Physics C, Mechanics, is kind of like AP Physics 1 and a bit of AP Physics 2, but you throw in some calculus. Just sprinkle it on, and the math gets nastier. Yeah, but it's still doable. Like, for example, you could use derivatives or integration in order to go from velocity to acceleration and whatnot.
So basically, to simplify it down, it's really fundamental. When you're learning physics 1 and 2, everything's a lot more uniform. So something will be moving at a constant rate, or its acceleration will be at a constant rate. But once you get to Physics C, you start learning what happens when things aren't uniform. Like, take a real object, for example. It's not going to have the same mass throughout. It's not going to be a point mass like you'd observe in Physics 1 or 2. You look at it as a whole object and how the whole object is affected. And you learn about things such as non-uniform mass. So, like, the mass is changing according to a function. Or the spring doesn't follow Hooke's law, so it has a different function which you have to follow.
Like, I guess a cool example is, imagine we're like spinning on these chairs we are on right now, right? And right now, in Physics 1, you'd imagine that we are all like plastic mannequins where we have the same density inside, whereas Physics C would kind of take into account like different densities, how, you know, your bones are more dense than your skin. And so a lot of calculus goes into it, and it gets kind of funky. But it's still not as bad as its sister.
Physics C, E and M. So a Redditor put it best. Mechanics is kind of like taking a walk in the park, and E&M is kind of like taking a walk in the same park while the park's on fire.
Yeah, E&M is not. It's kind of like that physics quote you said.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on.
Well, there are a couple things. Once you finally understand like a couple of things, it just feels really accomplishing, though. And we're going to talk about a bit of that later.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So on to our first question.
Yeah.
How did you take the exam?
We actually were a different case scenario from, I guess, the usual AP exam. Because our school doesn't offer AP Physics C, we had to go out of our way. We were the only two in our class of about like 15 or so. I feel like a few others were going to, but they didn't. We took our exam at another school that did offer AP Physics C. And now most schools don't actually offer AP Physics C because it requires calculus, and calculus is already a grade 12, a senior level course. So we had to do it at this like math and science accelerated school. We took it there, and yeah, there were a few other like stranglers from different schools that were like super hardcore.
Actually, I think most of the people that ended up taking it weren't actually from that school, because a lot of the people who were enrolled in the class didn't end up taking any AP exams that year. Not many grade 12s at that school took AP exams.
Conspiracy, is that it's just too much.
So our next question is, can you give us some general tips, tricks, and advice about how to prepare for Physics C? So one of the biggest and most important things I feel by far was really helpful in this was analyzing everything by graphs and units. And this is something we actually didn't do for E&M, which is why I feel like we didn't do as well as we could have on that. And for mechanics, it's really easy to visualize because you're working with things such as meters and seconds, which are really easy to visualize. Like, it's literally like throwing an object across the room and seeing how it
1
reacts.
meter.
And so you kind of learn the relationships between everything, like the relationship between force and work. And while you do learn these relationships in AP Physics 1 and 2, you don't think about it the same way that you do in C until you learn all those integration and all the neat derivative things that follow behind it. So definitely for sure, take a look at how graphs interact with each other and how everything's kind of interconnected.
That's deep. For me, I don't know if I could follow that, but one sec. The Princeton review is something I'd very much recommend. We actually have 20 books. Cheers. Yeah, and so it goes really in depth. There is also one called 5 Steps to a 5. That one's a bit more descriptive, but this has like 2 full-length practice exams. Each little chapter has its own 10-question chapter, multiple choice exam, and like free response. So much practice. We got like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. There was that one time we got 10 out of 10 on our multiple choice. So good. So good. I almost like framed it because...
Yeah. And most people actually say that the Princeton review is generally harder than the AP exam itself, which we felt it wasn't true for this year, but looking at past exams, it was generally true. This was a lot harder than what you'll actually end up seeing.
For sure. Princeton review, this is not a paid advertisement, but if Princeton review, you see this video and you want to...
Or if you want to let us into your school, we have no problem with going to Princeton.
Yeah, as long as you don't have to pay, you know, because...
We bought the book.
Yeah, we bought the book, hey! I don't think they're affiliated, though. There's...
Oh, it feels bad, they're not.
Princeton Review is not affiliated with Princeton University.
Well, if you want to pay for our education to Princeton, we wouldn't mind that either.
Moving on!
Alright, so another big thing is there's going to be a couple of, like, obscure little side topics which you don't really need to know, but it really helps to, if you do have the time, it really helps to go and look at the material and try to understand that. So one specific thing, there's this one really funky equation which is probably one of the hardest things to like, just visually looking at the equation, it stands out as like probably one of the most difficult things in the book.
Yeah.
Or in the cheat sheet that you get, and it's called the Biot-Savart law. So basically it's, or I don't want to get too in depth, but basically it's how to figure out the B field at a point when you're looking at more asymmetrical materials such as curved wire rather than a more uniform wire which you'd use Ampere's law for. And so Michael saw this and he was just like, nah, I'm not going to do this.
No, it was like a week before the exam and like I had no more RAM in this peanut of mine. And
so, like I said, I learned much quicker than Michael. We've talked about this in past videos. Check them out if you haven't. Link in the description. But, so I learned a lot quicker than Michael. So while Michael was, I think you were taking a nap at the time or something, and I was like, okay, how about we just try and figure this out, because it looks really interesting.
It's not a we, it's just you.
Yeah. So I was just like, let's figure it out. It looks really interesting. So I spent like solid 20-30 minutes, I think, like watching videos, trying to figure out where it's coming from, looking at the example which they gave us, which wasn't the best. It wasn't very well phrased, and it was like a simple little thing. But looking through it and understanding it helped me like understand the general concepts of calculus and how it related to the course, and like how the notion of calculus is so important and integral to physics, because there's this one thing where you integrate across a circle to figure out the B field around a circle, B field around a circular loop of wire, and this is stuff that you'll learn in physics 1 and 2, but you won't know where the proof comes from, and then you'll see the proof here and you're like, that's really cool.
But like it's also really hard, so
yeah. And it never actually ended up being on the AP exam, even though it was like one thing I actually understood about E&M, so it feels bad, man.
Feels good. Okay.
So another simple trick is go onto AP College of Arts' website, and they have about 20 years of past exams that you can go through and look over, and we ended up creating a chart, creating like a list of patterns.
Yeah, so like with each topic, say for example, like kinematics, forces, for electricity would be like circuits, electrostatics. We made like a little chart, and then each year, and then we had a little like chart, we had a little tally chart of how many times specific like topics, type of question, because there's only 3 free response questions per physics C exam, and there were patterns. What were the patterns that we saw?
So for mechanics, we typically saw more questions about springs, torque, and rotational, and for E&M, we saw one of each: electrostatics, RC circuits, and magnetism. So this wasn't, well, in calculus, we saw very strict patterns. The first question was always about rate of change.
Yep.
But in physics, it wasn't always the same. It always got mixed up. So we still saw neat patterns, and they're always being rotational.
And I guess that's a good part of being a physicist or being a scientist, because, you know, we were analyzing the data. It was like a mini lab we did ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, past exams, I guess that's also like a thing in university. Like you always hear about people wanting to study past tests, and it's just a great way to prepare yourself better for the exam.
So another thing we saw is it gave a breakdown for how questions were marked, and we saw a bunch of kind of strange little things. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, at least in AP Physics 1, there was like a weird thing where you could have like a question that's asking for 4 things, but it give you 5 marks because you have a mark reserved specifically for not giving extra information. And so sometimes it's better to write what you know rather than just write everything and hopefully some of it's right.
Yeah. And another thing, which was specific to the AP Physics C, I believe, is you got a mark for having the right equation. So at one point during E&M, I just didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what the question was asking. So I just wrote down a couple of equations, and I think I got the right equation. So I think I got a mark out of like however many for that. So
yeah, cool thing with the Princeton review, they actually have like kind of like a marking scheme where you can actually mark your own exams, mark your own practices, so that it's. I would say it's accurate to how you do on the exam, but we haven't seen our score yet.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So our final little tip and trick is just go to your teacher for help, even if they don't specifically teach the course. They're trained to know about the course, and they probably learned a bit about it in university. So just
bit about it.
Yeah. So just go and try and ask your teacher, and maybe they'll have a neat little thing or shortcut that you could use to quickly learn a material. Speaking of teachers who have neat tips and tricks and cool science facts, is there anyone you'd like to talk about?
Yes! Actually, our physics teacher has his own channel called Science and Me. You can check it out in the description below. He has a lot of cool science, physics videos, and
it's fun stuff.
Fun stuff.
Alright, now for the moment everyone's been waiting for.
Oh, no.
Time to see our scores. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each other's scores, we're going to write it down, and then we're going to unveil our scores at the same time. So I won't know what my scores are, and he won't know what his scores are.
But I'll know his score, and he'll know my score.
Yeah.
Oh, yo! It's going to happen in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so you just look at each other's scores. I know his scores, he knows mine, and we're about to do our...
But we don't know each other. So first we are going to reveal our mechanics scores. Let me get it out. Let me just check that is...
Yep.
Alright. So how do we do this? We're gonna point to the camera?
Point at the camera.
Alright, 3, 2,
1,
1, go!
4.
4! Hey!
Same score.
4, okay, alright.
Now on to
E&M.
This is where it gets real juicy.
Okay.
Let's hope we got the same score for this too.
3, 2, 1,
4.
3! You got it! Oh, it was a good battle. Oh man, Cha 3.
I guess the RC circuits really spooked me. I think that's the one thing that you got that I didn't understand really.
Yachts of art. Yachts of art.
Didn't show up on the test.
Oh man.
I should have studied RC circuits instead.
Thanks so much for tuning in with our little mini AP series. If you guys have any questions, let us know in the comments below. I'll put all the information if you want to contact Cha 3.
If you want to learn about the Yachts of art law.
Yeah, because I have no idea.
It wasn't on the exam though. Feel bad.
Thanks so much for watching and peace out.